3 days ago, I, 28F, married my boyfriend of 5 years, Jason, 28M. My youngest sister, Allison, 26, was at the wedding too, and true to form, she was plotting to steal the spotlight. But luckily for me, I saw it coming and made sure to stay 2 steps ahead the whole time. About a week before the wedding, the baker who was making our cake reached out to me with something strange. Apparently, Allison had contacted her behind my back. She claimed I wanted a second cake, a pregnancy announcement cake, no less, and said she was just helping arrange it by calling the baker herself. She even offered to pay double what I was paying, just to make sure it showed up as a surprise and stayed secret from me. Thankfully, the baker wasn't buying it. She had some integrity and figured she should check in with me first. The second I heard what was going on, everything clicked. It was obvious Allison was planning some ridiculous attention-grabbing stunt during my wedding, and I wasn't wrong. Instead of cutting her off or uninviting her, I decided to play it smarter. I was furious, not just because she wanted to hijack my big day, but because it was so petty and unnecessary. Sure, I don't love her, but I'd never stoop that low just to get noticed. The whole thing just made me feel sad that she couldn't let me enjoy my moment. So I made a plan to beat her at her own game. What I ended up doing has now blown up into a full-blown family drama, and my parents are livid at me for it. But I'll get to that part. The ceremony went off without a hitch. It was only afterward, during the reception when we were about to cut the cake, that Allison made her move. Right as Jason and I were about to slice into our wedding cake, she stood up, said she had an announcement, and brought in her own cake. Our poor baker had to wheel it out like she'd been asked. Her cake had "Congratulations on the baby" written in frosting. The room went wild. People clapped, gasped, and started congratulating her and her husband. My parents completely lost it. They were crying tears of joy and acted like I didn't even exist for a solid 10 minutes. Thankfully, a few of our relatives realized how wildly inappropriate this was and stayed by my side. It was still my wedding day, and this felt like a total ambush. After soaking up all the attention, Allison smiled smugly and said we should probably get back to the wedding. That's when I decided it was time to flip the script. I smiled right back, told her I was so happy for her, which caught her off guard, and then acted confused and said something was missing. I told her we couldn't celebrate properly without one more very special guest. That was the cue. Right on time, our surprise guest entered the room, just as Jason and I had planned. And I know you're wondering who it was. Well, it was Jared, Allison's ex-boyfriend, the one she dated right before she got with her husband Eric. Allison and Eric, 28M, had started working together and eventually began dating, but before him, she had been living with Jared, 26M, her college boyfriend. From what I'd pieced together, their relationship had been rocky. Jared had been ready to settle down, but Allison wasn't. And based on what my mom told me and what Jared's friends later confirmed, there had been a messy overlap. My mom once mentioned that Allison and Eric started dating about 3 years ago, and they've been married for a year now. But Jared's friends said their breakup didn't happen until about 2.5 years ago. That math doesn't lie, she was with both guys at the same time for at least 6 months. Jared knew about it, too. He put the pieces together by the time she married Eric, but chose not to say anything. He's a good guy, not the type to ruin her big day out of spite. And I hadn't brought it up either. I figured it wasn't worth stirring up old drama until now. But after the baker tipped me off about Allison's little stunt, I decided I was done keeping her secrets, especially since she was clearly going out of her way to ruin my wedding. So I contacted Jared. At first, I wasn't sure if he'd go for it. This drama wasn't his problem anymore, and I wouldn't have blamed him for wanting to stay out of it. But when I told him Allison was pregnant and planning to announce it at my wedding, he was stunned. Turns out, she'd been keeping in touch with him all these years. Not like she was saying she still loved him or anything, but she'd regularly check in asking how he was doing, what he was up to. It was just enough to mess with his head. And let's be real, if you're married, you have no reason to keep chatting with your ex, especially when you overlap the two relationships. Jared told me he felt strung along. He thought maybe she still cared about him, and her sudden silence these past few weeks, likely because of the pregnancy, felt like a betrayal. After I explained my plan, it took some convincing, but he agreed to show up. And the second Jared walked into the reception, Allison's whole vibe changed. The smugness disappeared. Everyone who recognized him suddenly went quiet. The air got heavy real fast. Jared didn't waste any time. He walked straight up to Allison, congratulated her on the pregnancy, and then turned to Eric and casually mentioned how generous it was of him to let her keep in touch with an old boyfriend, even one she had been cheating with. Eric, of course, had no clue about any of this. The moment Jared dropped that bomb, he looked completely blindsided, like he couldn't even form a sentence. Jared thanked Jason and me for inviting him, then casually walked out, leaving behind a room full of stunned silence. That silence only lasted a few seconds before everything exploded. Eric immediately started shouting at Allison, demanding answers, and within moments, the two of them stormed out of the venue. That's when the real drama kicked off. My parents lost it on me, yelling that I was completely out of line for pulling something so cruel and calculated over something they considered a petty sibling rivalry. I didn't care to argue. I told them straight up if they had a problem with what I did, they were more than welcome to leave too. And they did. A few other guests followed them out, clearly uncomfortable with how things had played out. But the people who mattered to me stayed. Most of my friends and a handful of relatives stuck around, and thankfully, the wedding went on. The only difference was that my parents weren't there anymore, and honestly, in that moment, I didn't miss them. After the reception, no one brought up Allison again. Our remaining guests just congratulated us, smiled, and left peacefully. Jason and I came home feeling oddly validated. We genuinely believed we did the right thing. And to this day, we still stand by it. But the very next morning, the peace was broken. My parents showed up at our house uninvited, and I was shocked to see them at the door, especially after everything that had happened the night before. Last I saw them, I told them they were free to skip the wedding if they couldn't respect my decisions. But now they were standing in my doorway, angry and demanding. They came in hot, blaming me for destroying Allison's marriage. According to them, Eric had been completely rattled by the fact that she'd stayed in contact with Jared while married to him for almost a year. And he was even more devastated to find out there had been overlap between their relationship and hers, with Jared essentially confirming she'd cheated at the start. I mean, of course he was upset. Who wouldn't be? He'd been blindsided and humiliated. Allison played him for a fool, and I merely exposed what she was trying to bury. I didn't lie. I didn't twist anything. I just let the truth surface. So no, I didn't feel like I was in the wrong. But my parents weren't having it. They didn't come to talk, they came to pressure me. They said that unless I apologized to both Allison and Eric and told them that Jared's entire speech had been something I orchestrated as a joke, they'd cut me off completely. No more family. No more contact. I stared at them, stunned. Did they seriously think Eric would buy that? That he'd believe it was all just some prank gone wrong? The man isn't stupid. He clearly put the pieces together the second Jared walked in. And even if I did lie and pretend it was all for laughs, it would be obvious I was covering for Allison. But more than that, I didn't want to lie. This wasn't a prank. This was a truth bomb that had been long overdue. So I told them no. I said I wasn't apologizing, and I wasn't going to pretend like I had made the whole thing up. That's when they lost it. They started shouting that I was selfish, that I had gone too far, that I'd embarrassed the entire family, not just Allison. They said I had completely lost my mind over something that didn't matter and made everything worse. But I stood my ground. Eventually, they stormed out of the house. After that, my mom and I blocked each other. And even though I've tried to move on, I haven't stopped thinking about the whole thing. Maybe I went too far. Maybe it was a little over the top. But at the end of the day, Allison was the one who came to my wedding with the intention of making it about herself. She tried to hijack my moment, and I gave her exactly what she was begging for: attention. Just, not the kind she wanted. So no, I still don't see myself as the villain here. Update number 1. Hey everyone. First off, thank you for all the support, it genuinely means a lot to both me and Jason. We didn't expect so many people to understand our side of things, and we appreciate it more than you know. A few of you had questions, so I'll try to clear those up. Some folks asked how I even had mutual friends with Jared. So here's the deal, Jared and Jason actually went to the same high school. Jared was a junior and wasn't close with Jason directly, but he was on the football team. A lot of Jason's buddies played on that team too, so they all knew Jared. I became friends with several of Jason's friends over the years, and through them, I learned about Jared, Allison, and the whole relationship timeline, including the overlap. Jared and I never really talked much before all this. Honestly, this whole wedding thing was the first real conversation we've ever had. So, no, I don't know why he didn't cut Allison off completely after the breakup. That's not something we ever got into. I figured that was personal, and I didn't want to press. From what I can tell, he still has feelings for her. And yeah, I feel bad for him. But I'm not a therapist. I had a goal, I reached out, he agreed, and that's where we left it. Anything deeper than that is between him and his own healing process. As for Allison, I have no idea what was going through her head when she kept texting Jared all these years. Why stay in touch with your ex when you're married? That's not something I'll ever understand. I don't have an answer for that, and I'm not going to pretend I do. Anyway, it's been a week since the wedding, and honestly, I'm done with all of this. Whether Eric stays with her or divorces her, I don't care. That's between them now. But my parents are clearly still invested. We haven't spoken since they left my house, and we've both blocked each other. I feel a little sad about it, but I also kind of knew this was coming. Allison's always been their favorite. She's the youngest, the golden child. And no matter what she does, she always gets a free pass. I spent most of my childhood trying to win my parents' approval, but eventually, I realized I was never going to get it. As we got older, my jealousy turned into resentment, and I started putting distance between us. The only reason she was even invited to my wedding was because my parents pushed for it and because she had invited me to hers. But if it were up to me, she wouldn't have been on the guest list at all. And what I said before about her needing attention, that wasn't exaggeration. It's been a lifelong pattern with her. She can't stand the idea of me being the center of attention. She has to make everything about herself. Now, after everything, we're officially going no contact. I haven't heard from her or anyone else in the family, except for the few people who've taken my side. Everyone else either blocked me or ghosted me, and I'm honestly okay with that. If standing up for myself is such a problem for them, then maybe they were never really in my corner to begin with. And no, I haven't reached out to Jared since. After the wedding, I sent Jared a quick thank you text, and he replied saying he was just glad he finally got the closure he needed. I haven't heard anything since, and I'm not sure if Allison has tried to contact him again. But if she does, I trust he'll let me know. For now, though, everything's gone eerily quiet. Honestly, that silence is kind of a blessing. Jason and I are finally getting to enjoy our life as newlyweds, and our honeymoon is just around the corner. I'm really hoping that if my parents or Allison have any more drama to throw at us, they do it before we leave, because once we're gone, I'm done. I'm not answering calls, I'm not entertaining any more of this chaos. If they do try something before then, I already know how I'm going to handle it. I'll shut it down on the spot. They've shown me exactly where I stand with them, and now, it's time I return the favor. Update 2. Well, I was right. Jared texted me again not long after I posted that last update. He said Allison reached out to him, asking if they could meet in person. But when he showed up at the cafe, he walked straight into an ambush. Both Allison and Eric were waiting for him. He was about to turn around and leave, but Eric stopped him and started yelling like Jared was the one who'd done something wrong. Jared calmly pointed out that he hadn't wanted anything to do with Allison since their breakup, that it was actually her who kept contacting him, not the other way around. Eric, of course, didn't believe it. He claimed Allison told him Jared kept reaching out and she only responded out of politeness. But Jared came prepared. He pulled out his phone and showed Eric the messages, screenshots proving that Allison had been the one initiating contact all along. That shut Eric right up. After that, Jared left. He later told me he went because a part of him still loved Allison and wanted closure. But after that meeting, he was completely done with her, and I think that's the best thing for him. He deserves better. As for Eric, I can't imagine he's going to stay with her after all this. The lies, the manipulation, the betrayal, it's just too much. Especially now, with a baby involved. And knowing my parents, they'll probably still find a way to blame me for all of it. They haven't reached out yet, but I'm sure that won't last long. And when they do, I'll be ready. I've got plenty to say. Update 3. 3 days after that last update, my parents finally showed up at my house, with Allison in tow. Instead of unblocking me or texting like normal people, they decided to confront me face to face. I let them in, not because I wanted to reconnect, but because I figured it was time to end this dysfunctional relationship once and for all. They started out by telling me that they had always treated Allison and me equally, and that I'd just been jealous of her for no good reason. I didn't even argue. I just let them talk because I was curious how far they'd go with their delusion. Then they dropped the bomb. They claimed Allison only announced her pregnancy at my wedding because she wanted to share my joy and thought I'd be thrilled for her. Apparently, the whole scene with Jared had made it clear I had known about her plans all along and had intentionally set her up to be humiliated. They couldn't wrap their heads around why I'd do something like that to my own sister. They even said that if I had a problem with her pregnancy announcement, I should have confronted her privately after the baker tipped me off, instead of plotting revenge over something so insignificant. And then came their real reason for visiting. They told me Eric had officially filed for divorce. Allison had apparently tried everything to save the marriage, but Eric was done. And now, in the middle of her pregnancy, she had no idea what to do. So, naturally, my parents decided the logical next step was to demand that I not only apologize to Allison, but also pay for her divorce expenses, her medical bills, and any other costs that might pop up along the way. I couldn't help it. I laughed loudly. I thought they were joking. But they weren't. Allison looked me dead in the eye and said that yes, she could afford to pay for all of it herself, but since I had ruined her marriage, it was only fair that I cover the cost as punishment. I stopped laughing real quick. I told her flat out, I didn't ruin anything. If her marriage had been solid, she wouldn't have been messaging her ex behind her husband's back. She wouldn't have maintained ties with someone she supposedly moved on from. If she wanted to point fingers, she should look in the mirror. I told her I wasn't paying for anything. If we were talking about ruined events, she had tried to sabotage my wedding. If I hadn't caught on, she would have hijacked the entire day. She was just pissed that I turned the tables and exposed her. My parents, of course, jumped to defend her, insisting that they'd always treated us the same and that I was the one acting like a spoiled child. I told them what I've always known to be true: they've played favorites since day one, and now they're reaping the consequences of the daughter they babied turning into a manipulative mess. Eventually, I shut the conversation down. I told them I had nothing else to say. Jason took over from there, and I went back to my room to lie down because honestly, that whole interaction drained the life out of me. Jason had stayed quiet through it all, partly because he's got a short fuse and I knew he wouldn't have handled their nonsense as calmly as I did. I didn't want him getting dragged into this circus. But once they wouldn't leave, he threatened to call the cops. That did the trick. Finally, it was just the two of us again. And thank God it all happened before the honeymoon. Now we can enjoy our time without that storm cloud hovering over us. Update 4. Jason and I left for our honeymoon 3 days ago, and honestly, we're doing great. The sun's out, the food is amazing, and for once, the only drama in our lives is deciding what to order for dinner. But that didn't stop the circus from trying to follow us. After the showdown at our house, my parents and Allison doubled down. They had some of our extended relatives text me, trying to guilt-trip me into apologizing and making things right. They acted like I just randomly decided to ruin Allison's life while she's pregnant. I was tired of the lies, so Jared and I had a talk and agreed it was time for some receipts. He went ahead and posted the screenshots of his messages with Allison, proving beyond a doubt that she was the one who kept reaching out to him all this time. Not the other way around. That post blew things up. Allison and my parents went ballistic. They claimed it was character assassination and even threatened to file a defamation lawsuit against both of us. But here's the thing, you can't sue someone for telling the truth. And if they try, I'll hit them right back with a harassment lawsuit. If they want to play legal games, fine, let's go. In the meantime, I think Allison should stop worrying about her public image and start focusing on the divorce and the custody battle that's coming. If I were her, that's where my energy would be, not picking fights with the people who exposed her. Thankfully, the relatives who were already on my side have made it clear they're done with my parents and Allison too. They've seen enough. They know who the real problem is now, and I finally feel vindicated. At first, I felt guilty for splitting the family, but the truth is, it needed to happen. The cracks were always there. I just stopped pretending. Now, Jason and I are soaking up every minute of our honeymoon, making memories, and focusing on our own future. We've decided we're not letting anyone, not Allison, not my parents, not their drama, take this away from us. They can only ruin our peace if we let them. And we won't.